Hey everybody, what's up? It's Harold here. A few weeks, I don't know how old this video is. I think it's like a week or two old, maybe. I could be wrong on that. But I watched Rogue Goals, or I saw Rogue Gold's video on PvP in the Division, and I wanted to give my take on it. I wanted to see what he had to say. So let's get into it.
Developers of The Division 2, leadership of the Division franchise at large, we need your help. Specifically, the PvP player base and community needs your help. Now, I know just the utterance of the word PvP will cause many people watching to gasp.
Only the newer players. I feel like PvP was like a really big thing for Division 1 players. And I know a lot of people that kind of like left the game because of how they handled PvP at the launch of Division 1.
Shudder and recoil. There's no question that PvP is a divisive topic and brings with it a lot of baggage from the Division's history. I'm not here to try and pretend that that's not the case.
For me, I can say that for me, that was a selling point of this game. When you see the old bait and switch, and I'm not even gonna fucking sugarcoat it. It was a bait and switch trailer for the original Division 1. They do this mission, they're doing their comms and stuff. They come out of the mission, boom, PvP. I was like, this is going to be the sickest game in the world. That never happened. Division 1's fun, but that never happened.
But at the same time, whenever PvP is discussed, I try and remind people that although it is easy to pretend that every single PvP player out there is ultra toxic and out to ruin everybody's day, there are so many more who simply enjoy the challenge of player versus player combat, who enjoy coming up with inventive and strong builds to pit against other agents.
To be fair, there's no inventive or strong builds. The meta is terrible.
Who enjoy the intensity and asymmetric fights that the Dark Zone offers. My favorite content within this franchise, and the reason I got hooked on the Division all the way back in 2016, was PvP, and I'm making this video today because my favorite mode of content within the game is hurting, and it needs some love. Some things I'd like to clarify.
Oh, it needs a lot of love.
However, this video is not just going to be a rant about how appalling it is that PvP has been neglected for so long. Does it suck that it's received very little content or support for years on end now? Yes.
Well, it's felt like anytime they have their little like dev talks or whatever, which they've been more frequent, but they're getting very few and far between up until recently. It felt like they just do not care.
Without question. But it's not like that happened for no reason. I can make an entire video on its own going into Red Storm's involvement with the franchise, their departure, the lack of resources since then, and how that's impacted content prioritization. But frankly, that all doesn't matter. We're at where we're at, and nothing will change what has gotten us to this point. Now, some may ask, like,
there's a lot that could change.
Those who don't care much for PvP to begin with, why bother with all of this, or with PvP altogether? It's the lesser played side of the game compared to PvE, and we barely get enough content as it is for the game as a whole. Those are fair points. However, I would ask you to consider this. As much as some don't care to acknowledge it, PvP has been part of the Division.
He's showing the original trailer.
Division's identity since the day it was
the bait and switch trailer. Jesus Christ, is so lame. Are these supposed to be clans? I just realized that I never noticed this before. Each of these guys have a name underneath, like a clan underneath their name. Are they supposed to be like a rival clan? How was this not a thing, dude? How did they not do this? This is like the selling point for me when I saw this game, was this fucking trailer. God, it was so cool. It was so cool. You're like, oh man.
Field back in 2013, and while yes, it has always been secondary to the PvE core of the game, you cannot ignore that the Division 1's Dark Zone is a big part of what defined that game and drew.
That was the main fun of that game.
Win so much mainstream attention. It's perhaps even more astounding that all these years later, in 2025, for a game that nowadays caters to a predominantly PvE audience, Dark Zone and PvP content are among some of the most viewed and popular videos on my channel.
It's still fun to watch other people like compete against others. You know, it's still fun, even though the DZs in Division 2 are awful. They suck. They're not good. I'm being very nice when I say this. These are like me using the best words possible to not be mean about how terrible the Dark Zone is in Division 2. It is the worst thing in the game.
Recent times.
There's only one Dark Zone that's cool, and it's the East. The other two, I cannot stand to go into those places. I hate the South, and I hate the West. Those are the worst two Dark Zones, period. I'd rather hang out in the East.
My point is this.
But they're too small.
Yes, having a sound and functional PvP side to the game does nothing but bolster the franchise's overall player count and drives longevity through endgame content that requires far less frequent content development and drops. The reason I make this video is that unfortunately, the Division 2's current PvP presentation is rather unsound and at times hardly functional. Now, I'm not coming on here to ask
That's generous, Rogue. That is extremely generous.
that huge amounts of resources be siphoned away from PvE content development in order to prop up PvP, but what
My opinion is they don't have enough, like, what development? I am a extreme hater on the direction of the game so far. I do find certain things fun. I like the new LMG set. I liked the expansion to an extent. It felt extremely lacking. I know a lot of my friends that played, once they realized it was nothing more than the story mode, they didn't play. They have not played since because there has been nothing new added.
I want to try and articulate
You can only run Iron Horse and Dark Hours so many times.
and amplify today is how a vast number of PvP players have been voicing very serious concerns about the very
And conflict is stupid. Conflict is terrible.
framework of PvP content within the game, and how, unfortunately, very little has been done to address it. I didn't choose just any random time to make this video, either. Recently, we learned that a successor to the infamous PvPvE survival mode from the Division 1 is making its way to
This should have never gone away. This should have never gone away. The fact that they didn't capitalize on this at the end of Division 1's life cycle, going into Division 2, is the biggest fumble in this game's fucking history. Aside from not giving us a large dark zone. Not giving us a big dark zone was beyond dumb. Not having, and I don't remember if this is completely true, but I'm pretty sure that they were afraid of prox chat, and it barely worked at the beginning of Division 2's launch. So, like, you didn't even have the same fun. Like, I remember you would go into the like, yeah, you'll get some assholes, right? But you would go into Division 1's DZ, and everybody's in there talking their shit in prox chat. That shit was so much fun. It was so, there were so many funny things you could do in there. And it barely functioned, and the DZ was 12 people. 12 people. So stupid. And then not including survival was beyond dumb. They pivot to create Heartland, which was kind of like a survival fraction shooter successor to it, and then like they just completely scrapped it, which again, extremely stupid. I don't know what they were thinking about doing that. Like, I know it's Ubisoft, if they don't get instant monetary gratification from a title, they're just gonna throw it out the window. Granted, this coming back is awesome. This coming back is so cool.
the Division
As long as it's not just PvE. If it's just PvE, fumbled.
2 with survivors, and while not confirmed yet, it's all but a given that this will include at least the option to opt into PvP combat.
If it doesn't, it's gonna flop hard.
That's notable because this will be the first quote-unquote new PvP content that this game has had in years, and while that is very exciting for someone like myself who has loved PvP since day one, it's rather hard to imagine it actually releasing into the Division 2's current PvP environment.
I'm not even the best player either, like, at all, and I love PvP. Like, I don't care if I go into the DZ and I get stomped. It is still fun to go in there and just, like, mess with people, to go rogue, to be the bad guy. It is fun.
Where, for example, cheating has skyrocketed in the recent months.
Yes, and that's where it feels like they don't care.
Being just one of the topics that I want to address within this video. So, for the sake of the more than you'd think PvP players out there who simply want to enjoy their time in that corner of the game, for the sake of faithfully supporting this content that already exists within the game that you offer and market to newcomers, and for the sake of repairing what's broken ahead of this next big chapter for the game arriving, I kindly ask
what was he doing?
that you please give me a few minutes of your time as I walk through what I believe to be the most critical top-line concerns of the PvP community. We begin with features. Now, there are an endless number of new features that PvP players would love to see come to the Division 2. More Dark Zone events like the subway contamination.
Just give them a bigger Dark Zone. a large dark zone.
We got in the Division 1, conflict improvements like more mode offerings or private matches, the list goes on. However, to me,
I think conflict's awful. That's just me.
And many others, there's one feature that rises above.
Like, I don't want to play Call of Duty in the Division. I don't want to play a Gears of War version of the Division. I'm only saying Gears because it's third person. No, they don't play the same. I'm fully aware of that. I've played the game. I just don't like conflict. I think it's a stupid mode.
The rest in terms of its significance for restoring some order and balance to PvP combat itself, and that is expertise levels. As they stand, expertise levels within PvP not only create a major power divide between veteran and beginner players.
Okay, this is going to be my first, I don't agree. I understand for conflict turning it off. I don't want to be penalized because you haven't been grinding the game as long as I have. And I don't care if some dude, and again, you can see a dude with 15,000 shade levels. It doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't mean anything. Most of these people that have high expertise, they glitched. Let's just keep it a buck. A lot of them glitched to get to where they were. And even then, it doesn't even feel that impactful sometimes. It really doesn't. Outside of weapon damage, maybe the armor is useless. Expertising your armor is useless. Expertising majority of your skills is useless because the majority of them either don't function properly or don't. It's like they chose to have the expertise do a section of the skill that just straight up does not matter. It would, you're like, oh, this should increase the damage of this. Instead it does the radius. And you're like, why? Why did you do that? So I don't agree with the not expertise thing, maybe in conflict. And even then, I find it annoying.
There's much more so than the usual gap created by optimized versus unoptimized builds, but they also simply skew time to kill in what I believe to be a highly unhealthy way. Now,
Yeah, but to be fair, even with expertise off, there are dudes that are 1 to 2 shotting you in conflict because of the way some of these builds are, because they haven't addressed them. Looking at you, capacitor build.
With Project Resolve in early 2024, the last time that we saw any real significant changes made to PvP, expertise, along with shade levels, were actually removed from conflict. And since then,
I don't think you should, that's fine, but I don't think you should do it in the Dark Zone. I don't.
I went from a player who would spend 80% of his time PvPing in the Dark Zone and only 20% in conflict, compared to nowadays, where I spend 80% in conflict and only 20% in the DZ. And that's simply...
Also, I thought, and I could be wrong, and I'll have to double check this. I could have swore the normal DZ didn't have it, and it was the invaded that had the fucking cuffs are off, no holds bar. I could be wrong. I'll have to double check that. I'll have to look it up at the end.
It comes down to the fact, while it is still flawed for many other reasons, PvP combat itself feels much better, in my view, without the presence of expertise levels.
No shot. I'm sorry. No shot. It doesn't even matter. It literally doesn't matter in there.
As noted prior, expertise levels, given their grind requirements, create a major power gap within PvP.
That's not the problem with PvP. The problem is that they've let builds remain unscathed for far too long, to the point where it's just not worth going in there. The Bighorn region build, there is no reason at all they do it in all blue cores should be 2-tapping me and I'm the one with the damage. None. He has no way to increase his damage, yet he is 1 to 2-tapping me in all blues, and I cannot kill him with the damage build. That is ridiculous. There is no reason that the guy hodgepodging his gear together with a capacitor, using it not the way the gun's intended to be used, is just destroying you. My contention is that expertise doesn't matter. It doesn't. You should not penalize a player for playing the game and getting to these points. Now, I can see where he's coming from. I get it. However, the problem lies in with builds not being put in, they're not putting any of these builds in check. They haven't, because they don't have anybody who does PvP, aside from maybe servers on. But they haven't nerfed the Bighorn build. They haven't nerfed regen. They haven't nerfed the capacitor build. And they need to heavily nerf these builds or bring the other builds up. Bring them up onto a level playing field. With expertise off, it doesn't matter because you go into this right here, and you were going to get 1 to 2 tapped by a dude doing full regen Bighorn. You're dead.
And if the Division 2 ever wants to foster growth within PvP content and promote it,
I mean, they've already kind of stated a while back they don't care about PvP.
As an endgame feature.
Anytime it gets brought up, they ignore it. Like, look how much armor this dude has and doesn't feel impactful. You don't feel like a tank.
For players to try, you can't then have it structured where dozens of hours of grinding is required on top of crafting an optimal build simply in order to compete stats-wise. The introduction of shade level brackets to the Dark Zones in recent updates certainly helped as new players get a bit of a reprieve, but as soon as they cross that SHD 1000 mark, which is quite achievable,
yeah, but isn't the real breakpoint like 2500? Like, that's when it like kind of doesn't matter anymore.
These days with the frequent XP events that run, they're then shoved into lobbies with players who have upwards of 30% greater damage than them, no matter how good their build may be. And that's simply not fun nor fair.
I'm going to be honest, I don't care about fun or fair in that matter. I just don't. It's like, and maybe this is my WoW brain because I've played way too much WoW. I want to be more powerful than someone, and I don't care if someone's more powerful than me because it gives me a reason to play the game to get to where they are. If you take the chase away, you're going to hurt the game even more.
As mentioned, there's also the implicit time to kill impact that expertise has.
It really doesn't matter.
Reason being, despite both weaponry and armor being eligible to be upgraded to expertise level,
armor's fucking useless. You know that, Rogue.
Level 30, 1% bonus damage on a weapon versus 1% bonus armor on a gear piece do not equate. Because expertise armor bonuses only apply to base armor and not total armor, this means that a fight happening between two fully expertise 30 players results in
and a lot of people don't even expertise their armor because they feel like it's a useless thing to do.
A faster TTK than it would with those same two players using the same two builds, just without expertise.
And wouldn't be the other fix to that be change how it's calculated as opposed to what it is now?
Bonuses. And in a sandbox where we have builds that can already delete players in the blink of an eye, this unbalance unfortunately exacerbates the other build-based problems PvP faces at the moment. Previously, the devs have explained that their reasoning for retaining expertise bonuses within the DZ is that the Dark Zone is meant to be an expression of your total power and playtime.
It should be. It 100% should be.
On your account. And while I respect that sentiment and agree with it in theory, the way expertise is structured and calculated as of right now, it simply cannot persist if the goal is to create a smoother and more fair PvP experience.
I don't think it's meant to be fair. I'm sorry, but if someone out-levels you, it should not be fair. It shouldn't. Granted, a lot of these people, you know, took their time to grind, and I'm going to say, in quotes, grind, because there's a lot of people who take advantage of glitches. They still exist. People have used them. I remember the turret glitch in the back of the day, where people were turret glitching and soloing legendaries. I never did that. Although it was really hard to do on console. I just hated doing it. But people have utilized and abused glitches forever to level up their expertise. Granted, there is an influx of new players due to the inclusion of now Game Pass. However, I don't think that you should penalize people who have taken the time to get to this point because someone else goes, not fair. I just personally don't agree.
This takes us to the next topic, balancing. Now, this is a tricky one, and before I say anything further, let me acknowledge that I understand how difficult trying to balance PvP within a game that shares its loot, stats, and talent bonuses between PvP and PvE sandbox is. Even games that have dedicated PvP support teams often struggle to get it right, so
honestly, attempting to force balance sometimes makes games not fun at all. Sometimes it makes it feel worse.
I understand the challenge it poses. That said, what I believe Division 2 PvP's biggest problem is when it comes to balancing is stagnation. Even if perfect equilibrium cannot be achieved, PvP metas usually benefit from regular shakeups to keep things fresh.
That's fair. It's kind of the same with I also play a lot of card games. It's the same when the meta shifts. You see the meta shift. That is fun. However, they haven't touched this meta in forever.
If you've got one or a few build types that are clearly rising above the rest and proving to be problematic for build diversity and TTK, you do some adjustments.
Is it bad for me to think that I think that the one-shot sniper build should always just be like one of the builds that just doesn't leave? Because I feel like you should be able to play that archetype in this type of game. I think that the one-shot build from a sniper should be in there. Granted, in order to achieve that, you basically have to like give up everything else to get to that, and that's fine because you've given up so much. I think that should be like one of the only builds they don't touch.
Adjustments and tweaks to try and curb them. The problem in our case is that simply doesn't happen.
No, capacitor, and bighorn regen builds are more powerful than anything else in the game.
Some of the most prominent PvP loadouts, and the ones that often prove to be the hardest to counter in gameplay: bighorn armor regen builds, melee bonk builds, status.
I have not seen that build, and I kind of want to.
Effect builds, mortar turret builds,
Oh, that mortar turret build is AIDS. Man, there are certain teams on PC where like you'll go into a lobby and their entire team is mortaring you. You're not moving out of your spawn.
capacitor umbra builds.
Capacitors, just cancer.
These
I think the fix to the capacitor is you literally make it work where the damage is based off the yellow cores. You make it where the capacitor does not function properly without it being utilized as a skill build gun.
same loadouts that were greatly overpowered a year ago still are today.
Because I haven't touched them.
And that's just not very fun. Now, if there's one thing that I picked up on in my years of passively learning about game development, much of that from observing and participating within the Division community itself, it's that things are never as easy to do as you think they would be. So, when us...
Well, yes and no, but they would also need to put the time into it trying to fix these things, which they clearly have not.
Players say just balance the game, I recognize that I have no idea how much effort or hours actually go into contemplating.
Agreed, I don't understand how it all works. I'd like to understand it more, but I think that... Okay, one of my biggest qualms with the Division itself is balance as a whole. Now, when you look at the Division, and you look at how the game's played, in PvE, there's clearly sets and items that are just far and beyond better than everything else. Granted, I think the tipping scale set's probably one of the better sets they've ever included in the game. Giving another playstyle to people who are like playing damage was great. However, look at all the other sets that are in the game that are just, outside of having world events, terrible. Majority of the skill builds are awful. You don't use them. People are like, well, yeah, but this one build's really good when you use this one modifier. Okay, cool. But guess where you can use that modifier? You can only use that modifier in the open world and in missions. You can't use the modifiers in PvP, and you can't use the modifiers in raids. Why? Why do I have world events going on, or seasonal events, and I can't use the modifiers? Why? Well, the integrity of the raid. What integrity? Half the times on the leaderboard in the raid come from players who were hacking or cheesing their way through. What integrity? When a season comes out, I should be able to go into the raid and use my seasonal modifiers the entire time, because sometimes some of these seasonal modifiers have made other builds, granted only in the open world, feel very strong. Very strong. And that's fun, because that opens up the games where I don't have to play Striker 24/7. I don't have to play a healing build. I don't have to play this specific loadout of gear to do a certain thing. I don't have to. I can use my wonky fire build. And I was a Firecrest guy in Division 1. I love that set. It is so much fun to me just to set everyone on fire. And we got Exuro in this game, and Exuro isn't even scuffed Firecrest. It is just flat terrible. Terrible. Refractor was fun. It's not good. It's not. Hardwire. You have so many builds that like try to do the same thing as other builds, and they just not even as good. Like, you have skill builds, entire sets for skill builds that are literally worse than just running an all yellow build for your skills. They've got too much gear in this game that is virtually useless. Look at the number of exotics that get used. How many of the exotics have you seen that are like, oh man, this thing seems pretty cool, and then you use it and you realize this gun is terrible. It is literally just a component. You could literally remove probably 95% of the exotics from the game and no one would care, because the majority of them are terrible. They need a complete overhaul of the gear in general, period, in my opinion.
Implementing.
That was a rant that kind of like just went way off, but it's how I feel.
And testing, balancing changes. That said, Massive, Bucharest, whomever it may be, please balance PvP. Despite no changes on the surface,
I think you need to bring in a dedicated team that tests this stuff, because obviously these devs, while they have good ideas, are not testing these items and these sets and this gear in certain aspects of the game. They're not testing in PvP. They're not testing on a difficulty higher than normal. Sorry, but the only place that any of these gear sets feels good is on like normal story mode. Anywhere beyond that, you play on like the highest difficulty of the game, half these sets, you're gonna die. You're straight up just gonna die. You don't deal enough damage. You're a walking waste of space. And you could be a walking waste of space solo. There are NPCs that are killing things faster than you.
Being made to PvP for well over a year, as I mentioned, the quality of the moment-to-moment PvP gameplay has noticeably degraded within that time frame.
Oh, and if it's not that, you're going in there and some guy's on the other side of the map in his spawn, fully auto shooting you with a sniper rifle that is firing like a shotgun through the walls.
Largely because we continually get new gear, new exotics.
Again, you get useless items.
And new stat possibilities added to the PvP scene.
I would love to feel that way, Rogue, but I don't. None of these items that come in are remotely usable. They are generally terrible. Sometimes you'll get one that's pretty decent, and then they immediately go, that one, we didn't, we'll go and fix that one, but you'll still let the other stuff that's been running rampant not get touched.
Sandbox, seemingly without much consideration for how it may be paired with what exists already.
It's because they're not testing their game.
Armor regen builds, which were already nearly invincible a year ago, being able to reach 2 million, maybe 2.1 million armor. Nowadays, those can hit 2.5 million, and that becomes incredibly hard.
And don't leave out the fact that they are using a gun that doesn't rely on their damage. They're using a bighorn to straight up two-tap you in full blue cores with almost 3 million armor.
To deal with when that player can effectively strafe and also still deal out considerable damage with something like the
considerable is generous, Rogue. Very considerate, very generous considering how much damage those builds do.
Bighorn. On the other end of the spectrum, as if 6 red glass cannon builds weren't lethal enough already, the recent introduction of the Tinkerer exotic mask has skewed PvP balance altogether, now allowing for shotguns to one-shot even the highest armor-tiered builds.
You need to. You need, if you're going all in, and this is where I'm going to if you're going all in an archetype, it needs to feel good. Shotguns were rarely used up until recently. They were used at the start of the game. There were some builds like the start of the game that were insane. But they're just, they don't feel good. And the Tinker, there's also a lot of bugs. I don't know if they've addressed them yet. They might have. I haven't logged on like this week. I need to. But the mask was bugged. You could do a lot of stuff to you could exploit the game. Because exploits have been running rampant in this game since launch.
You can put enemies down in just a handful of shots at range with an AR. The dials just keep getting increased, with seemingly no recourse for players other than to lean into the insanity themselves.
Yes.
And that has turned Division PvP into a game of brute stats and strength, instead of a game...
I hate to break it to you, but that's every PvP game. It is every PvP game with a MMO, any sort of MMO archetype to it. It's all about having the most of something.
Build creativity and player skill that it used to.
Creativity could be a factor if they rework these other sets. If they rework these other guns. If they reworked a lot.
Thrive on. So, even if nothing else that's on the table is able to be committed to PvP.
Like, how was this fun? You're literally spawn camping them. I hate conflict so much.
This time, it would be more appreciated than to simply try and do a few more balancing changes each new season.
They don't need a few, they need a complete overhaul.
And for those ready to type up a storm about how PvP balancing always comes in and ruins PvE, it doesn't have to be that way. The game already has...
It could improve PvE if they took some of these other sets and made them viable.
Built-in PvP.
Sorry, but who wants to play with Striker until the game fucking... for the rest of the life cycle of this game? Nobody.
And
I hate Striker.
PvE talent.
Tipping scales was a good inclusion. Again, great inclusion.
Differentiate.
But if you're gonna, I haven't tested the raid. I'd love to.
Make it so that in PvP, the Tinkerer causes you to take an overall hit on damage when
No, you don't need to be penalized for having taken the time to get the item
in use, so that its viability leans more into what creative mechanical achievements you can possibly find by mixing talents over just achieving ungodly damage numbers. There's plenty of older exotics that still dominate the meta too. Make it so that the Iron Lung builds its stacks upon hit markers rather than just firing. Make it so that we're able to build into hazard protection in order to counteract
Hazard Protect doesn't even work. That's the problem.
pestilence stacks. It's a
fair enough. It does work, but the Pestilence doesn't. Pestilence isn't a stat. You just have to make the Pestilence a status. But then, maybe if you did that, you would open up other builds, because the Pestilence will now work with things that you would assume it would work with, but does not work with.
tall order.
I mean, that could, like, if you turn Pestilence into a status effect, would that make Eclipse Protocol better?
No.
Would that be a build now?
And a lot of the time, simply getting PvP players to agree on what balancing changes they actually want to see can be the greatest challenge. But I promise, starting somewhere and doing something is going to leave us much better off than
I'll bet that dude had a ton of fun in that game.
continuing to allow the meta to stagnate. The final point I then wish to address is the subject of cheating. Now, once again, I want to preface this by saying that in no way do I believe that curbing cheating across the board is an easy feat to accomplish.
Unfortunately, that's the name of the game, because it is a, well, in this case, PC game. I don't care if some dude wants to fucking use a third party on console. I don't.
There are much larger, more prominent.
I mean, half those dudes. I mean, I have buddies that run people using controller on PC. Like, I don't think the whole Zim thing's a whatever.
PvP titles than the Division 2, many that have their own dedicated anti-cheat systems that still run into widespread cheating problems. It is something that's continually evolving within the gaming industry, and those who create, promote, and use cheats are constantly updating their strategies to try and avoid detection. That all being said, it cannot be understated enough that we have a big cheating problem within the game at the moment. And as
it's terrible. Go into, like, you get the rage hacker that literally will, like, you'll try to go into the DZ and farm, and this dude is teleporting from checkpoint to checkpoint, again, with a sniper rifle. He's shotgunning you with a nemesis through the wall and one-tapping you. And nothing gets done about it.
mentioned earlier on, this is one of my biggest concerns when it
Same with conflict. You'll go into conflict, and a dude will literally be in their spawn, one-tapping you across the map through the wall in your spawn.
comes to the game's future plans with the release of Survivors. Because I don't know what has changed in the past 12 months to allow this, but the volume of posts I get
There
tagged
it is. Yeah, he's showing it right now.
on in social media highlighting cheaters has gone through the roof. It seems that there are more of them than ever, with fewer sanctions being dealt than ever. And even on console, which historically features far less cheating, I've seen an unquestionable rise in lag switching, third-party plugin usage like Cronus and
I don't think Cronus is that big of a thing. I just don't. So you're given the ability to use a mouse and keyboard on a controller on console. The aim assist in this game is not very good. They're using it to use third party. They're basically using it to use a mouse and keyboard on console. There's input lag. I don't think that's big of a deal. It's the blatant hacking that I have a problem with. I don't care if you want to use a mouse and keyboard on your console. I just don't care.
Zim, and it's just really tragic to see, as it simply undermines the integrity and the fun of the PvP experience.
No, it's hard to have fun in a game with 3 crappy DZs.
And it leaves the
the blatant hacking, like rage hacking, teleporting, wall hacking, shooting through the walls, that needs to be taken care of.
chances for success of any new content, including PvP, notably Survivors, in jeopardy if cheaters are simply going to flood in and
it may get worse because it is included with Game Pass. I don't know.
ruin people's gameplay. Now, while the core issue, of course, falls back on anti-cheat software and detection, I also think that a major problem here is the reporting pipeline and communication. As the developers have told us time and time again, they apparently have no jurisdiction when it comes to dealing out sanctions to cheaters. As part of the Ubisoft umbrella, that power falls upon Ubisoft support, meaning that in order to adequately
Wait, so you have a game with an anti-cheat, because I believe it makes you install BattleEye, and they have no one to work on this? Or is this serious right now? What the fuck?
That
is okay.
Report a cheater. You can't just
I don't know if you're gonna get that one fixed.
Report them in game or even send a video with evidence to the devs on social media. You have to navigate to Ubisoft support, sign in, and then draft out and send a ticket. Now, in a perfect world, maybe there's a way in which that works out, but when
you really like your Eagle Bear, don't you?
You have the chance of receiving messages like this back from them, and no, this is not a joke, this was a real response that was given to a cheating report ticket, then we have a major pipeline issue here.
It means you don't have anybody within the division segment of the game, of the company, who even works on anti-cheat.
Again,
it's probably some bot, by the way.
Unfortunately, do not have the answer. This is a complex issue, but at the very least, whatever steps may be available to be taken in order to streamline the reporting process and improve the ability the team has to take action on those who are blatantly cheating within the game and are well documented in doing so, that has to be a top priority. And then beyond that, while again, not an easy fix, I know, some kind of improvements need to be made to the automated detection and prevention systems that are in charge of trying to keep this stuff out to begin with.
I think a problem with the whole cheating epidemic is that now people are so they're so black-pilled on cheating in video games that they think anyone who kills them at this point is a fucking cheater. I mean, I have a buddy who he swears up and down every time someone kills them, there's no way they killed them. Obviously, there's blatant, you know, you can say there's a very obvious people who are the guy teleporting, the guy walling, the guy shooting you through the wall, the guy using a gun and it's firing in a way that's not intended. But there are people who just believe because they got crapped on that that's not possible. He has to be cheating, and I don't always agree with that.
Invest in technology to detect third-party usage on consoles. Perhaps try and find ways to allow for PC cheat detection at a deeper level, because
that's really to focus on. You're never going to stop the third-party console thing unless that's going to have to become from a company level. From like, you're just not going to be able to. Sorry. 9 times out of 10, I feel like it's a placebo effect with these third-party peripherals. I think they make you feel like you're playing differently. They're not. I just don't think they're very good. The only place I consider cheating to be a real issue is on PC.
At the end of the day, regardless of what other efforts may be made to make PvP itself more fun, that all becomes meaningless if players can't actually appreciate those efforts, all thanks to those who choose the low.
And you're not suddenly going to become God because you use third-party peripherals on your console. You're just not. If you're already kind of mediocre or not a very good player, you're probably still going to be a mediocre or not very good player with a third-party peripheral. If you can't aim with the sticks, you probably can't aim with the mouse and keyboard.
And spend their time ruining the experience for everybody else. All right. Well, I believe that is all I have to say on the matter of PvP for now. Believe me, there is a lot more I would love to see in terms of PvP improving and evolving, but we have to keep things realistic. And before that could ever happen, we have to shore up and fix what we have now before even thinking about adding on top of it. I know resources have been tight these past many years, and that has been a major contributor to PvP sidelining.
Yeah, but before they got like, you know, a resource issue, they just weren't they didn't care, and it was kind of evident. You'd see them do their, like, back in the day, they do their little like review things, right? And if PvP get brought up and they would just sidestep the question, it just felt like they did not care.
But just this season, we saw the game reach its highest player counts since 2020. We've got DLC revenue.
Yeah, the DLC was a huge factor, and the inclusion of a game to Game Pass was a huge factor. Now, I think there's a lot more they could do, and I'm going to get to that at the end of his video.
Flowing in, we've got new resources being committed, with franchise veteran Magnus Jansen returning to helm the development on Survivors.
I should have never gone away.
It seems like, after all this time, things may be picking up again for the division, and while I don't expect that to suddenly mean a night or day difference on PvP support or changes, again, I just hope that it isn't entirely left in the dust, either. PvP is core to what makes the division the division. It holds a very special place in my heart as a fan, so let's hope that we might see some improvements down the road. Who knows? To any who made it through this video in its entirety, or who gave any of this a listen at all, thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and until I see you next, Rogue Gold out.
Okay.
Developers of The Division.
Oh, restart it. Go ahead and give that a like. Make sure if you watch Rogue's video, you go over there and give him a like. Am I subscribed? No, I'll subscribe now. Get it? I subscribed. Give him a like and subscribe to his video. Now, what would I want to see change in the division in regards to just PvP? Straight up, I don't agree with the take on expertise. You shouldn't penalize players who have gotten and ground for that point to get there. You should be able to feel like you're more powerful than someone. You should feel like you should see what this other person has and want to obtain what they've been able to achieve. It's like a chase. It's like if you played WoW PvP, it sucked to get stomped. It did. But it felt good to reach the same point as them and to do the same as them because it gave you a reason to play the game. It gave you a chase. I feel like they need to completely overhaul the gear. Most of the gear sets are awful. They are terrible. They just are. Majority of your exotics are, again, terrible. They're not fun to use. They might have some cool looking abilities on them, but in general, they just they don't do anything. I don't think you should penalize someone for getting an exotic just because it's powerful. Chase items should exist. Granted, it's not much of a chase item. It was just locked behind a time gate. The time gating thing is a whole nother issue. Extremely stupid. World events, seasonal modifiers. They need to be on in PvP. They need to be on in PvE as well, outside of grinding the open world and doing missions. They need to be on in raid. They need to be on in incursions, and they need to be on in PvP. They just do. Granted, things that are cheesy like golden bullet, sure. That kind of stuff, don't put that in PvP. But let me use my seasonal modifiers within PvE or in PvP. Let me. There was I like Heartbreaker. Heartbreaker's a fun set for me. It's a terrible set, but it's fun. They had the modifier last season where if you were to, shoot the guy with, I believe when an enemy became pulsed, they would catch on fire. One of the best attachments to use when playing Heartbreaker is the aim at the head. I can't remember which one it is. It's the laser. When you aim at them, it pulses them. That would have been really cool. That would be fun. I like the idea of turning Pestilence into a status. Maybe that would open up the window to be able to counter it. Maybe that would open up the window to make it usable in Eclipse Protocol because now it's a status effect. Maybe that'd be a little too overpowered. It would give you the opportunity to have some counterplay because you go, all right, well, I run into this team, check who's on the other team. You see that, it's this guy. He loves using Pestilence because you run into a lot of the same people. It's just the way it is in PvP. You run into a lot of the same people. It gives you the ability to switch out your gear and counterplay this guy. That'd be fun. They need to generally just take a lot of these items and just maybe you don't nerf the other stuff. You bring the other things up to it. You bring them up. That's maybe the best way to balance this. Not to bring down these items, but to, in a sense, bring up the stats of the other ones to make them more usable and fun. I think I really do just think they need to overhaul and or just get rid of some of these sets. They're useless. Same with some of the exotics. They don't serve a purpose in the game outside of being a resource farm. I would like to see them go back to I think one of the biggest things that hurt Division's PvP was the exclusion of having one large DZ. That was part of the fun of Div 1. You go into the 1 and you just run all the way up. I think you just run all the way up through all the various portions of the DZ. That was fun. You'd get a manhunt and you'd have the entire lobby of more than 12 people. Again, that is another thing that was extremely stupid. You'd have the entire lobby chasing you through the middle of New York. That was so much fun. You also had a reason to go into the Z because you'd go in there to farm some of the higher end items. I mean, don't get me started on classified sets. And a lot of people don't like them. I liked classified sets because I would take some sets and make them more functional and usable due to the inclusion of the classified bonuses and such. But there are things that I do agree with. They need to really get the hacking under control. Maybe that's the only thing I agreed with. But they need to get the hacking under control. I don't feel like you should penalize players again for having put the time in. And yeah, I think he had some good points. If you agreed with him, go over there and give him some feedback. And yeah. As for me, shooting for 20. We're at 13 right now. Shooting for 20 subscribers. We're at 13 right now. So like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. And yeah, thanks for watching. Take it easy, guys.